Welcome to This Week from Blue Mountain Broadcasting. I'm your host, Lynelle Ellis, president of Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association, and it is so good to be here with you today. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be interviewing Brent Scully, who is the president of Gospel Outreach later on in the program, so stay tuned for that. And then, of course, we'll have some station news, too. And right now, we will begin with our devotional thought. Is obedience really better than sacrifice? We've all heard that verse, obedience is better than sacrifice. Where does that come from? Well, it's found in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 15, verse 22, and the whole verse goes like this. Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. Now, this verse comes out of a story in the book of 1 Samuel, and it's a story about Saul, Israel's first king. Samuel the prophet tells Saul that God wants him to go and totally destroy the Amalekites because of the evils that they have done to Israel and other evils in their past as well. And they are told to destroy every person, every animal, and take no spoils. But when they get to the battle, and God does give them the victory, they decide to spare Agag, the king of the Amalekites, and leave him alive. And the people also decide that they're going to keep the best of the flocks and the best of the herds, and their sort of excuse or reason for this is, well, we'll use those animals to make sacrifices to God, which implied they would use someone else's animals instead of having to actually make a sacrifice and use their own animals in the offerings. And when Samuel arrives on the scene, the following story unfolds, and this comes from 1 Samuel 15, starting with verse 10. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I regret that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. Early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. When Samuel reached him, Saul said, The Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. But Samuel said, What then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we totally destroyed the rest. Enough, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord told me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. Samuel said, Although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission, saying, Go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the sight of the Lord? But I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of which was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied, Does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. Now let's look a bit more at these words of Samuel. They're so insightful. Isn't it better to obey in the first place than to need to come back and apologize and ask for forgiveness? Think about this in your own life and in your own relationships. Not just the relationship with God, but relationships with the others around you. Life is just so much more pleasant and peaceful when we obey God's commandments in the first place, when we treat others according to the golden rule to start with. Yes, a way has been provided for us when we sin, when we fail to obey. God has promised to forgive us and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. But how much better to obey in the first place? There's something else really interesting in what Samuel says to Saul. He says that rebellion is like the sin of divination and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Why are arrogance and rebellion so distasteful to God? There's some serious insights here into how God sees things. Rebellion and arrogance are really, really dangerous for the person who desires to follow God. After all, these are two of the very first problems that appeared in heaven when Lucifer introduced the problem of sin to the universe. We want to ask God to give us the will and the power to obey in the first place and to approach Him and our fellow humans with humbleness rather than arrogance or rebellion. To be humble, to be obedient servants. What a wonderful way to live. Even though God has provided a way to be forgiven for our sins, and we are so grateful for that, it truly is much better to obey in the first place. Please stay tuned. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining me now is Brent Scully, and Brent is the president of Gospel Outreach, and it's so good to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to learn more about Gospel Outreach. First of all, maybe you could just describe your role at the ministry a little bit, and then we'll get into what things happen there.
Okay. Well, I'm president of Gospel Outreach, and my role is sort of overseeing the directors, the 23 directors. Actually, there's several parts to Gospel Outreach. We have the Adventures in Missions program. We have the Adventures in Missions newsletter. We have the little what's the mega voice? I'm sorry, I'm throwing a mind blank.
It's but the audio.
The audio mega voice thing that has Bible on tape, and then just oversee the the whole ministry in a way. But we have people like our vice president Dave Gillum, who is in charge of overseeing the 23 directors, and Jeff Larson, who's in charge of the vice president administration. So that it's kind of my job is kind of oversee all of that. And
yes, so some of those get into the details of what's happening.
Public communications and stuff like this is what I kind of do too.
Yes. So you said the 23 directors. So these directors, we need to kind of describe what the work of Gospel Outreach is so we can understand what those directors are over.
Yes. So Gospel Outreach is a nonprofit organization where we support Indigenous Bible workers in 51 countries in the 1040 window. Some may ask, well, what's the 1040 window? It's a geographic area, 10 degrees and 40 degrees north of the equator. But the demographic is probably the most poorest and most difficult places to live in the entire world.
Yes. Yeah, and you have a big map at your office that I've seen.
I have a big map
kind of showing that area in the world, and it's true. When you look at that, you see some of the countries that you realize just have a lot of economic struggles.
Very much, and there's a lot of oppression. Like for instance, if you were to take and look at the whole globe, the whole world, and say, okay, what percentage of people have not heard the gospel of Jesus Christ? Well, 97% of all those who have not heard the gospel of Jesus Christ live in the 1040 window. So we're excited about this area because it's kind of the last frontier of those who have not heard the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
So. And
when you say indigenous workers, we're talking about people who are from those countries, living in those cultures, but they are working for Gospel Outreach.
They actually work for the church, the mission.
Okay.
So we support the Seventh Adventist Church over there. So our funds go to the mission, and then they support the Bible workers. So they don't actually work for us.
Okay, I understand.
And so the church over there is responsible for hiring and training, and we support them for those types of things, overseeing. So when we go over, when our directors who are in charge of certain sections and regions with a certain amount of Bible workers, then they go over there to inspire, to pray with them, to encourage, to help train, to connect with the leadership there, to see what we can do to be better of service to them. How can we better work together? What sorts of things can we improve? What sorts of things do we feel God is leading? Which directions God is leading us in? It's really an exciting time right now. There's a lot of interesting things globally going on that make what they're doing very difficult.
This is true, and some of them we're feeling in the United States right now, but there are a lot of other things going on. As you mentioned, there's lots of oppression, there's not the freedoms that make it easy to share the gospel sometimes.
Yep.
There's some persecution and restrictions and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, they call them, like in India, they have non-conversion laws.
Yes.
So you can't proselytize, and if you do, you can go to jail or, some other penalty. So it's very interesting, and these Bible workers are very simple. But I wanted to mention too, one of the advantages for doing it this way is that the indigenous workers, the indigenous Bible workers, already know the culture that they're living. They know the people, they know the territory, they know traditionally, they know all that happens there. So it really is a much bigger leap forward already, because when you take people from the United States who want to be missionaries, you have to train them a long time, a lot of resources to get them to the point where they understand their people. And even then, after all that training, they sometimes still don't understand how they think. Because there's a lot of times a big cultural barrier between our culture and their culture and mindset that's just, it takes a long time to actually understand how they think. But when we can hire already a worker who's so committed, so devoted to the Lord, who's on fire for spreading the gospel, it's just probably one of the most efficient ways to evangelize that's possible.
And that's one of the things that really makes gospel outreach unique, is this idea that you're working with the people who are already there and who understand and who want to present the gospel in their own culture. And as you're saying, it's so different. I mean, we've spent many, many decades sending out missionaries who didn't know how to just bring people to the gospel. They also wanted to sort of turn them into people like themselves culturally. So that's tough when they're Europeans and Americans and going to cultures that are entirely different.
I think you're right. I think sometimes we have kind of made that mistake in the past, but we really want to focus on gospel outreach to just help facilitate. Instead of just telling them what to do, we want to listen and help facilitate how they do it, and listen to what sort of operation and how they do it, so we don't kind of get in the way or become a stumbling block.
Sure. And I know we talked about the 1040 window and about this uniqueness, and I'm not expecting you to name off all the countries right now. That would be like some super hard quiz, but name a few of the kinds of places so we can kind of have in our minds the places that gospel outreach is active.
Well, we're really active in India. That's probably one of our bigger countries that we work with. We have roughly around 2,000 Bible workers, and we're in Nepal. And there are other countries that I'm not going to mention because it could put our Bible workers in danger.
Okay.
We work with countries where in the Muslim world.
Yes.
And when you enter in that world, it becomes a little dangerous for our Bible workers. But we have Bible workers in certain countries that are actually worshiping in mosques with the Muslims, and they're building relationships, and it's been very, very successful. So we're grateful. But we have other countries like.
If you can't name them, it's okay. I understand.
I want to be careful, but we're in 51 countries.
51 countries. There, we'll go with that.
Somewhere around 51 countries that we're in.
Yeah, and it's kind of exciting to be working where you can't talk about it, but
what that means is that there's a calculated effort, from the dark side to help suppress the gospel of Jesus Christ. But when that happens, on the contrary, that gospel flourishes. It's amazing how that works. God somehow, amongst persecution, opens up doors that would not otherwise be open.
Yes.
And people are so hungry for the gospel. If there's not a more ripe time right now in history for people to hear the gospel, it is now.
Mm-hmm.
They are so hungry to hear hope. They're so hungry to hear about things that can get them out of their oppression and their way of living. I mean, I go and visit India every year and some other countries, and you just see the oppression, you see the depression on their faces, just the struggle that they have. But you compare it to someone who has found good news of the gospel, and it's like night and day.
Yes.
You know, there's not that stone cold look on their faces. Their eyes are not just sort of zoned in, out. Mm-hmm. They're vibrant. They're happy. They're alive. They become mission minded. They're wanting to share the gospel with their friends and family members, even if it means it could cost them their life or friendships and relationships.
Yes. So I have to ask you, because of the times in which we're living, your directors are mostly from North America. Are they able to go and check in with the gospel workers right now, or have we kind of had to put an end to travel?
Well, that's interesting, because what the lockdown from COVID has done for gospel outreach, it's opened up a whole new avenue of communication. I mean, I never really knew what Zoom was until COVID hit.
We all know Zoom now.
But everything is happening through Zoom. And even when our Bible workers are locked down substantially in their own countries, they're still ministering through Zoom and through telecommunications or whatever it is they do. And that's how our directors are communicating at this moment right now. But it has opened up a much more frequent channel of communication with them, because now they see how efficient that is. You can Zoom them in, you can talk to them, they're excited to talk to you, have a little worship with them, encourage them, and they can encourage you and pray. You pray together. I mean, it's just really inspiring to see that happen. And so that's really what's happening now. I kind of think in the future, when we get kind of past this COVID thing, I think we'll resume to traveling overseas again. Mm-hmm. We do have several directors who are actually from the countries that they were born in that we visit. So they're really already in tune with that culture and
yes.
the lifestyle and whatnot.
Yes, very good. We have just a little bit of time left, but I want to talk about what some of the biggest needs are right now and how people can be involved.
Our biggest need right now, obviously, is continue to support us financially, because ultimately it's the funds that help support our Bible workers. We are a total volunteer organization, and so the majority of the funds that come in go to the directly to the Bible workers. We don't have, we have office supplies and stuff, so there's administration costs, but that cost doesn't include any payroll as far as administration. Yes. But prayer is another big thing that we need at Gospel Outreach. Include us on the prayers. We are continuing to grow. We're focusing on sort of the right arm of the gospel, which is the medical missionary piece. So our wives of our Bible workers are working together as a team now. So we work with an organization who trains the wives on home remedies, on childbirth, on basic needs and taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Because
hygiene.
Basic hygiene. Mm-hmm. So they're training these women to have the basic health, and they're going out together as a team. So the wives can minister on the health-wise, and the husbands can come in as the Lord opens that door to minister on a spiritual side of things. And we're finding that is so effective. It is so effective. People, like before, you would maybe expect they would let you, if you knocked on the door and you wanted to tell them about Jesus, you would maybe 30% would let you in. Now, almost 100% they're letting them in the homes, and they're building relationships. And that's a great, wonderful piece that God has opened up for us there. So, yes, prayers, financial supports. In fact, even local in our corporate office here, we're always needing some volunteers to help with certain things and certain skills.
That brings up, and probably not everyone knows that Gospel Outreach is right in College Place.
Yes.
So it's local here and looking for volunteers.
Absolutely. And you know, we love to have the hearts of people who come in and say, we want to volunteer. Unfortunately, we can't accept everyone because the skill sets that we need doesn't always match the skill set of the volunteer. So, but we just appreciate those who are willing to support us and come and give us a hand with certain things.
Very good. Well, Brent, thanks for taking some time today to tell us more about gospel outreach.
Thank you, Lynelle.
And thank you for watching. Stay tuned. I'll be right back with Station News. Welcome back. It's time now for Station News. And this is a chance for me to share with you the amazing things that you are doing through Blue Mountain Broadcasting Association. Your gifts to the station have provided for lots of exciting things in the past, and it's happening right now. I want to tell you that using the tools that you've provided here at our ministry, we've been able to record some testimonies during this past week. In other words, stories of how God has been working in people's lives, and also some music. And we've been doing this for a very specific reason. You are providing for our viewers some really exciting things during our fall fundraiser, which is coming up. And I know you're planning to tune in already, and even though here it is September and I'm talking about something that's going to happen in November. We're already working on that programming that you provided the funds for coming up. And also, speaking of exciting projects that you're a part of, Daniel Biggs and Mike Denny are out on the final shoot for Secret Life of the Desert. And they're right now where I'm recording this program out in the desert, getting the last footage that they need for the program, and then they'll continue on with the editing process so that we can bring you this program that you've provided for here on Blue Mountain Broadcasting, hopefully in not the too distant future. And while we're talking about Secret Life of the Desert, that reminds me of Secret Life of the Forest, a program that you also made possible here on the station, and it's now going to be premiered online September 21, and we're working with the Blue Mountain Land Trust on this online presentation and online premiere of Secret Life of the Forest. So you'll be able to go there now and watch starting September 21. And you might have received something in the mail regarding that, at least I know I did. And so you probably did too, so watch your mail for that. Also, I'm just going to go back again and talk a little bit about our fall fundraiser. Speaking of that, here's some very exciting news for you. It's our plan to bring the fall fundraiser to you from our new facility and our new location at Wallula Road. Now, that does not mean that all of our equipment will be moved over there or that the renovations that we need to do there before we can move the equipment will have taken place. They will not by the time November comes around. However, it does mean that we will need to have internet there so that we can take our remote Sling Studio, another item that you provided through your donations, to that location and connect to the internet and bring the fall fundraiser to you from that location. And it'll be the first time that we can really bring something live from our new facility, so we're pretty excited about it. And I bet you are too. And remember that in order to be able to do that, we need to hear from you with your gifts for adding internet to our new place. You know, we've got the tower up, we have the parking lot resurfaced, and we're working on the plans for the building. They're almost finalized, so a lot of things are happening with that. But the next step for us is to get internet out there at the new facility. And there's going to be a newsletter coming to you very soon. The fall quarter newsletter is in production right now and will be coming out in the very near future with the new schedule and stories letting you know what's happening with your ministry at Blue Mountain Television. So watch your mailboxes for that too. And if you don't happen to be on our mailing list to receive the newsletter, please contact the station via email or phone, and we'll put those up on the screen for you so that you can have a way to contact us and let us know that you'd like to be receiving the newsletter. And also, just want to remind you that you can give online, you can send donations into the station. There's lots of ways that you can reach us and help your local ministry here in the Walla Walla Valley to do even more to share about God's kingdom with our community. Blessings to you, and thanks for tuning in this time. I'll see you next time.